Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. India's first Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, died in a helicopter crash on the 8th of December 2021. Now, the latest report of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defence says the crash was because of human error. Now, the Mi-17 V5, in which General Bipin Rawat and his staff were on board, flew into the clouds and hit the hillside barely 7 minutes before it was scheduled to land in Wellington, Tamil Nadu. 13 other persons, including the pilots of the aircraft and General Rawat's wife, staff and protection detail, died in the crash. So what are the lessons that one can get out of this report? And how did General Bipin Rawat's aircraft, this helicopter, this Mi-17 crash, what are the lessons from it? Joining me to discuss this are two ace helicopter pilots, Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur and Air Commodore Ashutosh Lal. And in the studio, I have with me my colleague Deepak Badana. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. AVM Bahadur, absolutely heartbreaking, the statistics that we just saw of the crashes of the Air Force between 2017 and 2021. 34 crashes, of course, the most important, the most significant of these crashes is the crash in December 8th, 2021, where the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, and his staff perished. Tell us, as an experienced helicopter pilot, what goes into the Air Force when you experience a crash like this? What is the procedure that kicks in when you investigate the exact reasons behind a crash of this nature?
Thank you, Sandeep, for getting me on your show to discuss something which is very important and which grabbed the headlines because of the passengers that Mi-17 carried.
Right.
Any accident is bad.
Yes.
And if there are fatalities, it's worse. In this case, we lost the CDS, his wife, and his entourage, the aircrew, and the other people traveling. Now, when an accident happens, the first thing that the Air Force does is to set in motion a chain of events to recover people, to save lives. That's the first thing that the Air Force does.
Right.
So rescue helicopters are sent.
Yes.
The civil administration is contacted for finding out where exactly the aircraft has crashed, and relief parties sent it. So this is what happens from this retrieval point of view. Side by side, what happens is that the documents of the aircraft in question are sealed.
Right.
So that the history of the aircraft is preserved for the court of inquiry that invariably follows. If the accident is a fatal accident, then a minimum of the presiding officer's rank has to be a group captain and above.
Right.
In this case, the presiding officer was an air marshal, the CNC, the commander-in-chief of the training command, an experienced helicopter pilot. And an experienced team is given to the presiding officer that includes technical members, medical members, and others, anybody who would help solve the puzzle. So this is what happens when an accident occurs and the chain of events are set into motion.
Right, a chain of events set into motion, and in this case, in this particular crash, this very unfortunate crash which killed the CDS and his staff, Air Marshal Bahadur, human error is being attributed to the cause of this crash, and this also emerged from the Air Force's report submitted shortly after the crash in 2022, from what we gather. Tell us how you would arrive at a conclusion like this, and what does this really mean in light of this particular crash?
In an accident of the nature that we are talking of, where there were no survivors on board the helicopter, the court of inquiry is in for a very tough task, because they wouldn't get the first-hand account of what transpired. So the court of inquiry moves to the accident site and gathers evidence, the material evidence which is there available from the wreckage, plus any eyewitnesses around, civilians, military, uniformed, whoever, villagers, whoever are there, who have seen the helicopter or may have even just heard
Right.
the noise of the helicopter. So the court of inquiry then proceeds and tries to look for all these evidence,
Yes.
plus searches for the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder.
Right.
Now these are vital, and in this case, I understand both were retrieved and were milked in a good way.
Yeah.
The information available with them was there. So that helped the court of inquiry team arrive at its conclusion. Now you're talking of the human error, aircrew. The aircrew are not there to give their evidence. So
Right.
just remember, though the report presented to the parliament says it's a human error, aircrew,
Yes.
this is a deduction of the
Right.
court of inquiry, because you cannot blame somebody who's not there to protect himself or herself.
Yes. Right.
So this has to be kept in mind, and it's the deduction of the court of inquiry members where they think that this is the most probable reason of the accident.
Right. This is the most probable reason of the accident, human error. Spatial disorientation is what we're being told. And Air Commodore Ashutosh Lal joins us all the way from Vienna. He's a former helicopter pilot from the Indian Air Force. He's flown over 8,000 hours in various machines, including the Mi-17. Air Commodore Lal, this report that's been just tabled in Parliament mentions human error as the cause of the crash which killed the CDS and several other officers and his staff detail. What's your reaction to this, given the fact that we already knew since 2022 that human error was to blame, but to have this now in a document presented in Parliament, what are the lessons for us really from this very unfortunate crash in 2021?
Sunny, thank you very much for having me over on this. And I see my senior Bahadur sir is already there, and I heard him. In fact, we all agree. We, as a larger community from the armed forces who have flown extensively, we carry it in our hearts. We've flown together in the glacier and many places. Many adages have gone through us, and we've been being the watchdog of the human error accident.
Right.
Let me make the first point. We've been part of the training in the Air Force.
Yes.
We've carried it in our own hearts. Now that I fly in the civil and I see how it is being trained over there and what we are doing, all the qualifications that the Air Force gave us, all the responsibility that we have to live, let me start with an admission. Now that I look back
Yes.
at the training processes, as I see it now in the civil using simulators and scenario-based training and so on and so forth, and whatnot, virtual reality is like the next door actually. Let's start with an admission.
Right.
Because countries have changed their courses because of CFIT helicopter accidents.
Right.
You remember Iran president some time
Yes.
back?
Yes.
Remember Kobe Bryant
Yes.
in the
Just
US
last year. Yes.
with his 13-year-old daughter?
Right.
CFIT, right? In some other small way.
Right.
Closer home, YSR Reddy.
Yes.
Though there was an emergency on board that helicopter, but the helicopter went down because of the terrain and whatever. There are key words like situational awareness,
Yes.
crew resource management, which we teach. It's the process that we teach. So it's a constantly process which has to be updated, which
Right.
needs to be updated.
There's a
So, like Sir said, we are not here to judge anyone. People are
Right.
not here to defend themselves. Most likely deducted cause. Understood. If you recall, there was a marriage party which was walking down the track.
right.
There was a videographer on the track, and he took a last few seconds video of the helicopter which emerged out of clouds, re-entered the clouds and hit
Yes.
that. Sir is here in front of us, and he will abide by me.
Yes.
When we were taught by them only that helicopter, mountains, small problem.
Right.
Helicopters, mountain, weather, bigger problem.
Right.
And helicopter, mountain, weather, less fuel. What we did in glacier, and sir has commanded that unit that we
Yes.
flew in earlier. Biggest problem.
My colleague Deepak Badana is here in the studio with me, and he has actually a question for Air Marshal Bahadur. Deepak?
Sir, out of the, around 34 crashes have happened between 2017 and now, and 19 of those have been attributed to human error. Why is that? That seems to be an astoundingly high percentage.
Right, and quickly to add on to that, Air Marshal Bahadur, the fact that, taking on from where Air Commodore Lal said that there is possibly a need to revise some of the training methods in the light of, more recent incidents. You see this as one of the areas that the government, indeed the Air Force, should be looking at very closely, given the very high number of human error incidents that have happened in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I had a look at that chart which is there, and 19 out of 34, more than 50% human error aircrew is a high figure, very high figure. But there is also a sub chart which shows that 2017-18 it is some 3 or 4, and then next one goes up to 9, I think, and then next 3 years it drops down a little. But even 1 is 1 too many. Let's face facts.
Yes.
So no excuses for that. The issue is, yes, we have to look at the number of aircraft type-wise also, and the amount of flying that each type does.
Right.
Plus, the vintage will give you an idea whether we have simulators.
Right.
Air Commodore Lal is now flying in the civil streets, civil aviation, as he says.
Yes.
As he has just said. And it's a fact that the amount of simulator training
Right.
done in the civil side is good and high.
Right.
And the scenarios that they are put in, do we have in our services at present the same amount of simulator training that is available in the civil streets? I don't think so. But the modern aircraft which are
Yes.
coming, I do know, for example, the ALH has got a
Yes.
very modern simulator.
Right.
The V5 simulator has taken years to be set up, but I understand that it's functioning now.
Right.
I left the service 11 years back, so I really don't know whether the two which were to be bought and set up at Sarsawa and Bagdogra, whether they are operational. I think one of them is.
Right. So,
And if I just digress a bit, the C-17, the C-130, wonderful modern simulators are there.
yes.
So when you're talking of the full accident profile, which it was just spoken about, the number of fighter accidents are also there.
Yes.
There we come into an issue of the type and quality of simulators, the vintage of the simulators that are available. That needs to improve. And I think
Right.
the Air Force, it requires money,
Yes.
large amount of money. I'm sure the Air Force is pushing it.
Absolutely. In fact, very important point there, Air Marshal Bahadur, the fact that we need simulators and the Mi-17, as you correctly pointed out, Deepak, is a very, very important aircraft, not just because it's literally the workhorse of the Air Force and the Army. It is the aircraft that flies all across the country, but it also flies all of India's VVIPs, from the President to the Prime Minister to the Defence Minister, and the entire military brass are flown by the VVIPs. The Mi-17 V5s of the kind that crashed. So it is of great importance for the Air Force and of course for the Defence Ministry to figure out what to do in this case. And Air Marshal Bahadur has just mentioned that simulators are one reason. And I'm going to ask Air Commodore Ashutosh Lal also this, the fact that simulators, possibly you need more simulators to train our Mi-17 pilots, Air Commodore Lal, given the responsibility that
Thank you very much for
of passengers
this
that
question,
they
actually.
yes.
So let me put this in perspective. First of all, let me tell you what all good things are already happening
Right.
for past 3 to 4 years. Sir mentioned in passing, the ALH simulator is in Bangalore. It's a place called Hats Off,
Yes.
an academy called Hats Off, helicopter training Hats Off. There is a team of very dedicated ex-Air Force, Army, Navy pilots over there who are doing yeoman service to our helicopter community, who are training people from young blood which is being drawn into ALH now, boys and girls who are flying
Right.
it there. They are all going there and they're going through this process, and it's a protocol of VFR flying, that is visual reference flying, transiting to instrument flying. When it becomes dark and the clouds come
Yes.
in, you're not able to get to see outside. How do you say something called an inadvertent IMC,
Yes.
in which you are just about getting IMC and then coming back to VFR? What is the protocol between the 2 crew, the 3 crew? What kind of a call-outs are there? What
Right.
kind of procedures are there? So that at all times you have your situational awareness about yourself.
Yes.
Now this group of instructors and the instructors over there, and hats off, are doing a great job.
Right.
Is it possible for us to have generic simulators and understand this protocol, even if the simulator is coming late, like was pointed out for V5?
Yes.
Let me
Yes.
clarify. Both the simulators in Sarsawa as well as in Bagdora are functional.
Right.
They have a set of dedicated instructors and it is being flown.
Right.
V5, as you know, inherently has a limitation. It only has downward visibility
Right.
about terrain. That means a radio altimeter. It does not have EGPWS, Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System. That means it doesn't look ahead. It doesn't give you a warning of terrain coming ahead. So the
Right.
protocol is slightly different. To be able to see what is the minimum safety altitude
Yes.
and to descend or not to descend, to take calls or to turn which side. There are applications available on your pads, iPads and your,
Yes.
your thin tanks, which you can carry in the cockpit, which is certified. But let me caution, all this fixes are not going to work because it needs a systematic approach to the whole thing.
Right.
Step
Absolutely.
back. Right from the beginning, I mentioned the US Army has translated to now virtual reality training.
Right.
So helicopter pilots who are just being inducted, they are brought into this protocol.
Yes.
They are brought into the system wherein they would keep losing. You know, like sand in your fist.
Yes.
When you hold the sand fist very hard, the sand slips out. This
Right.
is situational awareness, always slipping out.
Absolutely.
And you need CRM to always keep regaining it,
Right.
so that you can make your airborne decision matrix in a very, very safe manner.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ekomdo
Otherwise,
Lal.
what I mentioned-
Yes. I'm
Otherwise,
afraid
what
we're
I-
completely out of time here, but thank you so much for joining us, AVM Bahadur and Ekomdo Lal, two of India's most experienced helicopter pilots. You heard it from there, the lessons that the IF could implement from the 2021 crash of the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat. Lots of lessons there, a lot of them are already being implemented. There are several other lessons that the Air Force could possibly look at, given the experience of the two gentlemen who've just been on our show to explain to us that military flying is challenging, especially when it's in adverse terrain, the kind of conditions, and of course the special military machines that fly our brave soldiers in combat. Of course, they need the best, and this is something that, of course, the services are looking forward to. But that is the crash that killed the Chief of Defence Staff, and that is the crash that possibly altered India's military history as well. But there's a lot that needs to be done to make sure that not one Indian Air Force aircraft goes down in a crash of this nature. Voices against Bangladesh's interim chief, Mohammad Yunus, are rising as violence against minority communities intensify in Bangladesh. From lawmakers within the country to activists inside Bangladesh and from outside, global religious leaders are now demanding a reassessment of his Nobel Peace Prize. As the atrocities on minorities continue, members of the Hindu community have asked for protection of their places of worship and are calling the Bangladesh government to protect the rights of minorities. And today we are talking to some of those voices. Joining me to discuss this are Pandit Satish Sharma, Director of the Global Hindu Federation in the United Kingdom, Kiran Chukapalli, the leader and founder of the International Peace Foundation, Mohanji, and Savio Rodriguez, who has filed a petition with the Nobel Committee to reassess the Nobel Peace Prize awarded to Dr. Mohammad Yunus. He's asked for this on the grounds of human rights violations and atrocities on Hindu and Christian minorities in Bangladesh. Savio, over to you first. Tell us what's going on in Bangladesh right now and what forced you to take these measures to bring global religious leaders together to pressurize the Nobel Committee to withdraw the prize awarded to Dr. Mohammad Yunus.
Sandeep, thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for taking our intent, which is Bangladesh Stop Hate, and giving us an opportunity to speak about the atrocities that are happening to minorities, in particular the Hindu minorities in Bangladesh. Dr. Muhammad Yunus has come into a position of power because of a coup that was seen the ouster of the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and now we have Dr. Muhammad Yunus in charge. But Dr. Muhammad Yunus is allowing for Islamic radicals to actually create mayhem and go berserk as far as their Islamic radical ways are concerned. Now, we have seen the impact of Islamic radicalism all around the world. We are seeing it in the conflict in Israel and Palestine. We're seeing it in the conflict in Syria that is seen the Islamic radicals taking a hold of Syria as well. And we've seen it in many other parts of the world. Bangladesh, to me, and which is what I am feeling extremely disappointed and sad about,
Right.
is and positioned itself as a secular nation. But under Dr. Muhammad Yunus, Bangladesh is going to turn into an Islamic nation. And because it's going to turn into an Islamic nation, the minorities, as we have seen what has happened in Pakistan and in
Right.
other parts of the world like Afghanistan, for example,
Right.
you will realize that minorities really do not have any rights in Islamic nations, and their numbers have been dwindling. If you look at the numbers
Yes.
in Bangladesh, even over the last couple of years, you would see that the minority numbers are dwindling. Therefore, it is important for the world to open their eyes out. When Palestine was under duress a couple of months ago, world
Yeah.
over, you had people coming
Yes.
out in support and asking for people to stop Israel's retaliation
Right.
against the dastardly terror attack that happened
Yes.
to the innocent civilians. But for Bangladesh and for the, unfortunately for the Hindus and the
Yes.
Christian minorities, there are no voices
Right.
coming out globally. And therefore, I decided to write to the Nobel Peace Committee and ask them to reassess the fact that Muhammad Yunus is a Nobel Peace laureate.
Yes.
There is a certain criteria, there's a certain credibility, and there's a certain integrity that is brought to a Nobel Peace laureate. And that is the issues of human rights violations. Now,
Right.
if today he is a Nobel Peace laureate, he must
Yes.
have got it in 2006.
Right.
Does that not have any value now?
Mohanji, this situation in Bangladesh right now, not safe for minorities. Do you see this actually continuing with the current regime in place, and there's no clear deadline for the elections to be declared? It could be anything between 1 and 2 years. Do you see a blind eye being turned to the persecution of minorities in Bangladesh, and how worried are you with this situation there right now?
Really worried, really upset. The situation in Bangladesh today has no particular order, and I do not expect any particular order with this current team who's ruling, even from judiciary to the military to police or anybody. And I do not see, even though it may sound a bit detrimental,
Yes.
I do not see any change in the
Right.
system until the country becomes completely Islamic, because then it's an Islamic nation. So that the whole agenda
Yes.
is ethnic cleansing, complete
Right.
wipeout.
Right.
And when it's totally wiped out, and then there is no particular reservation needed for anybody, that's the time when probably an election will happen. So right now, everybody is turning a blind eye. I think this gentleman Yunus, who's the figurehead,
Yes.
has much role to do, because it's anarchy. Everybody is a ruler.
Right.
Everybody takes decision.
Absolutely.
So
He's
there is
presiding
no
over
particular
anarchy.
control.
Yes. No one's in control, really. And, Pandit Satish Sharma, who's also on the show with us, I want to bring you in on this point about Muhammad Yunus presiding over what seems to be anarchy. There are groups that are running riot, which he doesn't seem to have control over. Do you believe, as Mohanji was mentioning, the fact that the ground in Bangladesh itself is being terraformed to exclude minorities from having a say in the elections as and when they may actually occur?
Jai Shri Ram, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this subject. I think it's about time that we recognize the satya of the situation. We have seen this happen so many times. What we are seeing is a religious tradition mandated supposedly by its divine creator, effectively cleansing and purging an indigenous civilization from its indigenous homeland.
Right.
The reality of Muhammad Yunus is that he's not presiding over anything at all. What he is he is a, if I can use a Christian term, he is a fig leaf. He is a fig leaf behind which the ethnic cleansing is being conducted. He is culpable, he is guilty, because without his approval, the release of imprisoned terrorist organizations and their
Right.
leaders would not have
Yes.
been given a formal approval. What I think is going to happen, and this is entirely predictable, is that we are
Yes.
going to see the creation of another killing field.
Right.
Pakistan, from the point of view of the indigenous people, the dharmic traditions, was
Yes.
a killing field.
Right.
And what we are seeing now is exactly the same forces being unleashed. What I think is worth us noting, though, is that is there any benefit in appealing to centers of power which, to be perfectly honest, do not have our interests at heart? We are seeing the revelation of many of these power structures, including states, members of the United Nations.
Right.
Their true nature and their true ambitions are being revealed.
Yes.
I have appealed to the British government to authorize a petition for a conversation, to debate to occur in Parliament on why Bangladesh has not been sanctioned by the British government. Normally, this sort of a request is
Yes.
responded to within 2 or 3 days. It's
Right.
now been 3 weeks and the British government hasn't responded. But it's had time to
Right.
accept the violent takeover of Syria on
Right.
theocratic bases, the ethnic cleansing of minorities,
Yes.
and yet it's also now announced a £50 million package to
Right.
that organisation, which appears on Britain's own list of terrorist organisations. So there is a situation we have to recognise as a civilizational state,
Yes.
that the people who we are appealing to have already revealed their true colours, and we
Right.
should be prepared to act in defence of our civilizational state.
Absolutely. Interesting point there, Pandit Sharma, the fact that, the strategic silence which our panelists have mentioned in previous episodes of the 9 p.m. show is of great concern. And Kiran Chukapalli, the point that Pandit Sharma was making, that there is a conspiracy of silence, it seems, when it comes to Bangladesh in the Western media. There's not enough, attention. There's not much of focus. It seems that it was mission accomplished when Sheikh Hasina was ousted from Bangladesh, and now nothing, whatever happens in Bangladesh, doesn't elicit any kind of global condemnation. Do you think all your energies are being spent in the wrong direction to try and create some kind of a global, pressure on the Muhammad Yunus government?
While there is definitely a silence from everyone, I completely believe that as long as we keep raising our voices,
Yes.
is the only way we have to stop this discrimination. Why? Because I was telling earlier that over a night in 1971 in the Dhaka University Jagannath Hall,
Yes.
in one night they have slaughtered over 8,000 to 10,000 Hindu students.
Right.
Between 1971 to 73, over 2.4 million Hindus were slaughtered in Bangladesh alone and displaced in Bangladesh alone.
Yes.
So that is a fast space that they can go through in slaughtering us. But
Yes.
if you look at this situation, for the first time, Hindus across the globally have
Yes.
raised their voices when
Yes.
Sheikh Hasina ji was ousted from Bangladesh.
Right.
So the incidents are still happening, but at least we could stop something like that. So we
Right.
should not leave our heart thinking that, okay, nothing is going to happen by our voices. Every voice counts, and we should keep on trying to raise awareness about this. That is number one. And number two, but what is happening in this front is, like I was telling, 73 Hindu lawyers
Yes.
in Chettogram area alone were given sedition charges. So,
Right.
and these are all Hindu lawyers.
Right.
So they are making sure that there will not be a Hindu lawyer to represent if something happens to a Hindu there,
Right.
including the leader of ISKCON. Also, now you see, like, anyone who tries to take that case is hounded, murdered,
Right.
killed, and everything.
Yes.
And another thing is the journalists. at least 5 top journalists have been given sedition charges.
Right.
Right. So they're kind of very clearly trying to completely silence the voices and silence the people within Bangladesh to fight back, and on which unfortunately we have very less control. But
Right.
what we have control right now is to create this global phenomenon, and that is why I really appreciate that all of us are coming together.
Right.
Because one last point that I really want to make is, please understand this, that Pakistan was divided from Bharat. Everyone, most of us think that East Pakistan was the epicenter. Dhaka have always been an epicenter. They are cold-minded, unlike Pathan. Pathans are aggressive. You know,
Right.
you can
Absolutely.
always nullify
Yes.
them, like how we were discussing earlier. Whereas these people are cold-headed and they can sweep us away very quietly. So the more noise we make is the only option that I can see. And we have to come out with a demand chart saying that 73 lawyers ke upar jo, what the sedition charges there, that
Yes.
has to be immediately dropped by Bangladesh government.
Right. So, Savio, a lot of religious leaders coming together. What's the plan really to build some kind of pressure on the Muhammad Yunus government to protect minorities? Do you think this is going to work?
See, our job at the end of the day is to tell the world that Bangladesh has to stop hate.
Right.
That's the agenda. In order for the world to recognize that there are minorities in Bangladesh that are facing vicious hate. This
Right.
hate is coming because of the religious beliefs of the majority in Bangladesh that are considering the minorities to be a threat to them or perceived threat to them. So the message that we are taking to the rest of the world, and I'm extremely grateful for every one of the leaders who
Yes.
have actually come together to take this forward, because Bangladesh needs to stop hate. Bangladesh Stop Hate is the campaign.
Right. Stop Hate is the campaign. Mohanji, you think these methods could actually work in the long term? Given the fact that you have a government there, you have Islamists running loose. They've been released from prison. Cases have been taken. Very significant, cases have been withdrawn from many of these leaders from the past. You say Bangladesh is trying to turn the clock back. Will it work?
It should work in the long term. All we can do is to keep talking, keep expressing, because we don't have the power to change things individually or collectively, even from outside. But when we address these issues consistently, and when we have conviction what we are speaking is true, then that will be heard in some places. But this is not just a Bangladesh issue.
Right.
The conscience of the world is affected. Not only here, in any place where there is an atrocity, when there is ethnic cleansing, and this is not just now. After Second World War, everybody said we should never have another war like this.
Yes.
And we should never have an ethnic cleansing like this. But then we had Pol Pot, we had issues in China, in Russia, and in everywhere. Now it is coming to a level where anarchy is legalized. This is a legalized anarchy. We can put Yunus in front and say that he's the man. That is actually taking our eyes off the truth to somebody like a victim or a person, and then that eclipses the true story. So we have to bring the true story out through any media possible. It's a time of social media,
Yes.
and it should reach people, bring up the conscience of the people. Conscience should wake up, and then it should collectively, effectively change the course of the history of the world.
Right. Pandit Sharma, Stop Hate, the Stop Hate campaign that you've launched, what is the kind of impact that it has had so far? Are you talking to a lot of political leaders? Are they listening to you? Are you, briefing them about the situation in Bangladesh right now?
We are doing our best to engage with them, but I have to make one simple statement, and that is that somebody like Muhammad Yunus doesn't have the personal, individual, institutional or organizational capacity to suddenly become the notional leader of a country. It's only possible when he's a pawn in the movement of very large forces. We are trying to talk to leaders who are a part of that movement, who have been responsible for it and who are engaged in what is actually a lesser form of human relationships. This leveraging of hate history teaches us that inevitably hate burns the people who leverage it as much as it burns the people who are the victims of their hatred. But this is a very difficult task to engage in and do. We have no option. We are going to do this. We're going to continue with it. But my concern is that Bangladesh, I feel, has been earmarked to become the next Ukraine, the next killing field where the actual population will be the ultimate losers, and there will be people and nations who will gain from creating havoc and wreaking discord and conflict into this space. Our concern should, as I said, be that we are witnessing another loss of our Bharatiya Sanatani civilization state's boundaries. You know, we always had a view that human nations are built on civilizational principles rather than lines drawn on maps and resources under the ground and water and other things. And the people who carry that point of view are being targeted all over the world. We have seen an anti-Hindu sentiment arising in places where we haven't deserved it, we haven't been responsible for it, and yet we are still being targeted by it. So we have to find the way to educate people that hatred cannot be used for profiting. A person who leverages hatred will ultimately see everything they valued, including their subsequent generations, devastated by the same unleashed hatred. And this is the message we're trying to get across to every single person of influence we can find. And so the hashtag Bangladesh Stop Hate, thank you so much for allowing me to display it. We want to promote it and proliferate it, and your support in this is most welcome and appreciated.
Right. Indeed, Bangladesh Stop Hate, the campaign that actually has, other implications for India, Savio, as Pandit Sharma was mentioning, the fact that Bangladesh is the next Ukraine on India's borders. We have one Pakistan to deal with, of course, China there to the north, but another Bangladesh, an unstable country on our eastern borders. What is the game afoot, and why should India worry?
India needs to worry for a very simple reason. If people thought Pakistan as an enemy was the worst enemy India has or had at this point of time, Bangladesh is going to be even worse.
Terrorism,
and the terrorism from Bangladesh, the hate that will go out to minorities in Bangladesh is be far more. Now, you need to understand the mindset of the Bangladeshi, and as Kiran had rightly said, the mindset of the Islamic radical in Bangladesh is far more vicious than the Islamic radical in Pakistan, and they will be far more brutal, far more animalistic. India hatred.
Right, India hatred, of course, and reasons for India to worry at this trouble in our backyard in Bangladesh. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on the News9 Plus show to talk about this very big concern right in India's backyard. The fact that, as our panelists mentioned, that Bangladesh could possibly be the next Ukraine in the northeast, one of the most sensitive parts of India. But that's a story that we've been tracking here at the News9 Plus show, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time, and all the best for this Bangladesh Stop Hate campaign. Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus.